T minus 3, 2, 1, ignition.
What you know about this life? Yeah. Just relax, baby, get high. Yeah, you're on your way to the best night ever. No top, no top.
What up, Best Night Ever League? Connor here, coming at you with the Week 4 recap. It's nice to not do the Week 1 recap. Gives me a little more to talk about, so that's cool. And I just want to preface by saying my Week 12 recap, I'm going big, so I want everyone to step it up between now and then the end of the season, because this is going to be kind of a normal recap, and then my next one, I think Week 12, I'm going big. So everyone, get your shit together. I want to see some good recaps. So I'm going to real quick run through the matchups. It wasn't a super exciting week as far as like close games. So I am going to go through those quickly, and then I also kind of previewed some teams, or like reviewed teams and stuff. So I don't want to spend too much time on the matchups. First off is going to be me versus Cam. This was the only close game of the week. I was carried by my quarterbacks. They were awesome. Derrick Henry looks like he's a little bit back to his normal self, although I have the feeling he's going to be annoying for me this year. Otherwise, some solid performances. Also some duds, both on my side and Cam's side. I think the winner is going to feel good, and then the loser, in this case Cam, going to be pissed at some of his players. If I had lost, I would have been real pissed at Olave and Hawkinson. My bench really popped off. Thank God Cam didn't start David Montgomery. Also, I could have started a lot of other running backs that would have been good. But I got the dub there. That's huge. I did not want to go 1-3. And I'm happy to ruin Cam's unbeaten streak. Next up is Andrew. Andrew's team popped off. Quarterbacks didn't honestly even play that well, but Christian McCaffrey's fucking crazy. 48 points is unreal. And then the Dallas defense is just stupid good. 27 points is crazy. As far as T-Bay goes, his team struggled. Kirk Cousins had a bad game this week. Herbert was still good, but he broke a finger in his hand. It's not his throwing hand, so we'll see how that goes. Swift, for his first game with T-Bay, was pretty good, and then Mandrews looks to be back to his old self as well. That drops T-Bay to 1-3, Andrews at 2-2, and then this was just a gross game. Michael's team was super ass. He barely had any people score over 10, even though his quarterbacks were a little bit disappointing. He did have a couple big bench performances, so I guess that's a silver lining. And then Jacob's team, Mahomes really struggled. Goff struggled as well, and then he just didn't really get a ton of production from his running backs either. Justin Jefferson and Amon-Ra St. Brown are super consistent and are definitely parts, like key kind of carrying roles for his team. Jacob lucked out, only scored 99 points, but still got the W. And then the last game of the week was Bobby's team versus Nick Finley. Bobby just fucking crushed it. Josh Allen had a huge game. Josh Jacobs finally kind of popped off as well. Stephon Diggs was huge, 36. A.J. Brown, 37. Would have liked some of those receptions and yards and touchdowns to go to Devontae Smith, but I imagine they'll have kind of a back and forth kind of relationship like that throughout the year. And then for Finley's team, quarterbacks popped off. Justin Fields finally had a good game, but otherwise it was a super underwhelming performance from pretty much all his guys. One silver lining for Finley, his bench played really well, so even though his starters didn't play super well, I think there's hope that the bench, the bench looks good, which means he has some talent on the roster. All right, so now I'm going to hop over to this little presentation I put together for the league. So again, these are the current standings here. We got Cam and Jacob at 3-1. Then we got 4 teams at 2-2. Big clustering there, and then kind of in a tier all by themselves, we got T-Bay and Michael. Their teams suck. Yeah. So these are the standings again. However, I have them sorted by points for. Points for is the standings on the top, and then points against is sorted on the bottom. So you can see I am just beating out Andrew, and then Finley's kind of close behind there. Bobby, and then interestingly enough, Cam and Jacob are not amongst some of the highest scorers. And then you can see down at the bottom, Thomas and Michael. And then on the flip side of that, the points for, Michael is getting his good luck still. He's got by far the lowest points for. And then Andrew, I'm glad that traditions hold strong with you as the highest points for. So then I just recap this on the right side here. Highest points for is myself. Highest points against, Andrew. Michael actually has the lowest points for and the lowest points against. I don't know if that's ever happened before, but the fact he has the lowest points against by such a large margin and is still 1-3 is probably concerning. I also threw in the league average points for, so you can just kind of reference to see how teams compare to that. And then the league average weekly points for, we're sitting at 129 right now. That seems pretty high scoring to me. I didn't look back in prior years, but seems like we've had a lot of high scores. The difference between the highest and the lowest points for, 118 points. That's almost a whole extra game. And then the difference between Andrew and Michael with the lowest is 96, which is already a big number too for only 4 weeks in. So what I did, I wanted to see, based off prior years in our league, what chances of playoffs you had based off whatever your record is coming out of week 4. So I look back over the last 3 years. Teams that are 1-3, that's happened 6 times in the last 3 years that a team has started 1-3. They've only made the playoffs once, so Michael and T-Bay not looking good for you guys. If you're 2-2, that's happened 9 times in the last 3 years, 44% playoffs. So anyone that's 2-2, myself included, still should be feeling fairly confident. And then if you start 3-1, so Cam and Jacob, 80% of the time those teams are making the playoffs. So you guys should be feeling very good about where you're at. And then I wanted to look into like week 5, add a little more stakes for week 5, get kind of the pressure, the nerves going for people. So I looked at, again, over the last 3 years, based off what your record is out of week 5, your kind of the past history as far as making playoffs. So as you can see, if you go 1-4, you're basically a lock to not make the playoffs. If you finish 2-3, you're sitting at 50%, 3-2, 57%, and then 4-1, basically 100% chance. So then what I looked at was to kind of break up this 2-3 and 3-2 group. How important is points for as far as being an indicator to making the playoffs? So the percentage of teams that were either 3-2 or 2-3 and finished as top 4 in points for, they made the playoffs at a 71% clip. So that is a good sign for those of you that are scoring highly, and not a good sign for some of you that aren't. And then on the flip side, 83% of teams who were either 2-3 or 3-2 and were in the bottom 4% would end up in the losers bracket. And then honest to God, I tried for like 10 minutes to like figure out the probability. I ended up having to ask ChatGPT because I'm too stupid. But basically, and I don't even know if this is right, but ChatGPT says that if you are 3-2 and 2-3 and top 4 in points for, your odds of making the playoffs are at 62%. So, just good info to know. So, looking ahead to week 5, I play Bobby. This is going to be a big matchup. 2 of the higher scoring teams. I am sure that my team will score a lot. Bobby's probably going to be this week's high scorer, though, based off my luck. Either way, though, both teams are in pretty good shape for the playoffs. I think in terms of rosters, we have 2 fairly strong rosters, and over at least 4 weeks. We've been fairly high scoring, which bodes well as far as playoff outlook. And then Michael versus Andrew. Andrew can essentially end Michael's season as far as playoff hopes. He has the highest points against, so who knows? Maybe Michael's team pops off. That is Andrew's luck. And if by chance he lost, that would hurt Andrew, but he's still looking in pretty good shape, given that he is one of the highest scorers. And then kind of a similar situation, Thomas could basically be ended after this week as far as playoff hopes. 2 low-scoring teams, Jacob and T-Bay. Those might be flipped. I think Jacob is 6th and T-Bay 7th. But if Jacob could pull out the W, that would be huge as far as his playoff outlook because, again, points 4 is not it's not super great in Jacob's favor right now. So, but being 4-1, that's huge. So, big week for him. And then Finley versus Cam, that'll be a fun matchup as well. If Cam lost, that would really level out the playing field in the playoff race. And then Finley, again, he's been putting up points so far, so even if he loses, I don't think it's full-blown panic mode for him. So lastly, what I did, I just broke down team by team, just kind of my personal opinion, as well as just some of the kind of core facts of the team. So starting off with Cam. Currently, he's 5th in points 4. He is the 2nd lowest points against, and he's 4th in max points 4. I don't think max points 4 should be read into too highly, but I think it does show a team that has both depth, which is important, and then also upside. I mean, I think we all know that upside and those big games are what, those big individual games are what win you weeks, and so I think it can be kind of a somewhat good indicator just to see kind of the overall strength and upside of a team. But Cam's looking good at 3-1. He has 5 players in the top 10 at their position. I didn't include tight end because tight end's just a shit show. So some of the pros, Burrow and Chase has been awful to start the year. And so if they get more back to normal, then that's kind of scary because he's already 3-1 and they've been shit. And then on the other, or in addition to that, Cooper Kupp and injuries in general have impacted his team significantly. So again, to be 3-1, given the injuries and the underperformance of those guys, that's big for him. I think as far as concerns go, he's pretty thin at running back behind Bijan. And then I think a big question is Monty a legit player? And also Cam, are you going to start him? And then Aaron Jones, is he just kind of old and washed now? And then what if Burrow and Chase are just having a down year and this is just kind of the way things continue to go? I mean, 4 weeks is a fairly good size sample size at this point. And then when Kupp comes back, does he and Puka, do they kind of cannibalize each other's value? Puka's been crazy to start, but we all know that Kupp is a huge target hog as well. So it's what happens when they're both there? Week in and week out, are you starting both of them? I think that'll be kind of an interesting thing to evaluate. So next up is Jacob, also at 3-1. Again, he's 6th in points 4. He has the 3rd lowest points against, and then he's also 6th in max points 4. He's only got 3 players in the top 10. And so as far as pros go, Mahomes and Justin Jefferson, they're incredible. Basically, you're almost locked in for 40, if not 50-plus points. And then Amon-Ra St. Brown and Goff, that's a nice stack. As far as concerns go, I think it's can you get enough points out of anyone else? Mike Evans is dealing with a hamstring injury. He has a bit of an injury history. Waller's been terrible. Etienne's been a little bit inconsistent. And then, as far as your running backs go, you haven't, they've been pretty average, I guess. They've been steady, but they haven't really, had a ton of upside or, big games yet. The two of them, or Madison's only scored over 12 once, and then Algiers your only other running back, so I think certainly some questions there. And then I think Mahomes or Justin Jefferson injury basically ends your kind of chance as a competitor, assuming it's a serious thing. But moving on now to my team, I'm 1st in points 4. I have the 6th highest points against, and then I'm 1st in max points 4. I've got 7 players, top 10 at their position. Some of these are a little fluky, like I do not expect Zach Moss to maintain top 10 unless JT sits out. In that case, someone come trade for him. My pros, my quarterbacks can carry me. They're the best. I am a big fan of them. My running back depth is, I think, a strength. That's always something I try and focus on. I have 4 top 10 running backs right now, and then also Kamara and Derrick Henry. I think for me, just starting the right ones will be something to figure out. My receivers have shown some upside. Granted, they've been inconsistent. All right, we're back. Sorry, video cut off. So I have a halfway decent tight end in Hawkinson. He's been slightly inconsistent, but compared to some of the other tight ends out there, he's pretty good, I'd say. So my concerns, receiver inconsistency. So my top 4 scoring receivers have all had one game, at least one game over 18 points, but they've all had at least one game below 5 points. So that kind of sucks, especially when I'm trying to decide week in and week out who to start. And then quarterback health. Hurts and Lamar have not had the best injury history, especially come playoff time for us. So that is always going to be a concern of mine. And then the fantasy gods have been a cruel bitch this season. My 2 losses have been by a combined less than 5 points. So that's been a real bitch. Last year I had the highest points against, so we'll see how things shake out this season. And then moving on, we got Andrew. He's second in points for. He's also 8th. He has the highest points against. And then third in max points for. He's only got 3 players at the top 10 in their position. CMC, Eckler, and then Nico Collins, weirdly. For the pros, his running backs can carry his team. They carry, literally. CMC especially is just nuts. He's second in points for, while some of his really key players have been disappointing so far. Trevor Lawrence is the quarterback 20. He's been kind of ass. I need him to step it up so that Calvin Ridley does better. But then CeeDee Lamb is also receiver 17. That's definitely a disappointment. But he does have the Cowboys defense, which is averaging 20 points per game. That's basically like starting a third quarterback. It's fucking crazy. I think there's only 1 or 2 other defenses that are like in the like 15, 14 range, and then everyone else is like 11 and below. So he's getting insane value from that defense. And then for concerns on his team, health of the running backs. Obviously, CMC and Eckler are his, I'd say, most important players, and then the depth behind them isn't super great. And then receiver depth and consistency. Collins has been surprising. If he keeps that up, I mean, Stroud looks good, so that's cool. That's good for Andrew. But then CD, again, has been disappointing. Dak is just, he sucks. I don't know. I don't get it. And then his only other receivers are Christian Kirk, Tyler Lockett. And they're both pretty inconsistent week in and week out. And so, I think he really is banking that Nico Collins stays at the level he's been playing. And then I think a big thing with Andrew's team is just kind of a lack of star talent and upside, particularly if CD and Trevor Lawrence continue to struggle. Again, like Nico Collins, Kirk, Lockett, no real like running back upside behind that. Kittle's been disappointing. So I think, good and bad. It's not great that CD and Trevor have been shit so far, but he's still 2-2 and second in points for. So if they do bounce back, then I think he's in really good shape. Moving on, we got Bobby. He is pretty much totally average across the board right now. He's 2-2. He's 4th in points for, 4th in points against, and 5th in the max points for. Probably a little bit of a disappointing start for him. But he's got some pros. The Bills stack with Allen and Diggs is legit. And then James Cook is actually, he's looked pretty good too. So that's a pretty nice like trio to have. And then, of course, having Travis Kelce has, that's just such a huge advantage. Especially just tight ends, like, seem extra shitty this year. I mean, we'll see if Mandrews really kind of pops off again. And then Hawkinson's been solid. But I don't know, the competitive advantage of just having Kelsey out there week in and week out is huge and should not be understated. As far as concerns, obviously extremely reliant on Josh Allen. If he were to go down, obviously he's losing that player, but then that directly impacts Diggs and to a lesser extent James Cook, and so that's always a concern. And then I would say running back consistency and upside. Jacobs did have a big week this week, but generally this season, his two main guys have kind of been underwhelming. They haven't been horrible, but they just haven't had those like real big games. Again, Jacobs kind of popped off this last week, so that's good. And then receiver 3 is a position for him that has been pretty horrible. So Higgins had that one huge game, and then he's had 3 sub 4-point games, and now he's hurt. And then Hopkins has only broke 10 once. The Titans fucking suck. And so I think that's kind of a concern for him as well. But overall, I'd say currently his record and points for isn't super reflective of the overall talent on the roster. And then moving on, we got Nick Finley. He's 3rd in points for, and then he's 7th in points against. So he's been had not had the best luck as far as teams going off against him. And then 2nd in max points for. And then some of his pros, Tyreek is just crazy, and I don't know if there's another player like him outside maybe like CMC that has such insane upside to like single-handedly win weeks. I have experienced his week winning upside multiple times, which I hate. A pro, Justin Fields has been bad except this past week, but he should be good. He was awesome last year. I think to be 3rd in points for and 2-2 with Fields being as shitty as he is, and then also showing a history that he can be a top 10 quarterback, I think that is a good thing. And then Russ has been good, and the Broncos D is horrendous, so that bodes well for quarterback production. The up room, I don't know what the fuck that says. Running back room. So Gibbs has been underwhelming, but again, rookie running backs tend to kind of get a slow start. But then JT hopefully will be coming back at some point. Pollard's been great. And so I think, if those guys like really kind of hit, then that would be huge. Brian Robinson has been good. Mostert's been good. Like, that's definitely a good like position of depth for you. And then as far as concerns, circling back on the running backs, does JT play? It seems pretty up in the air right now if he's going to actually play for the Colts or if he's getting traded. And then does Gibbs ever get more usage? And then receiver 2 is pretty gross for your team. Michael Pittman's super up and down. DJ Moore super up and down. Godwin has been up and down as well. I think ideal world, Fields starts to really pop off, which helps DJ Moore, and that kind of answers that question. But then concerns, Fields has been bad. Last week he played the Broncos, which is like getting like a nice little handicap. So I think it'll be huge, obviously, just to see how he plays as the season goes on, especially with the DJ Moore stack. And then moving on now to Thomas's team. He's 1-3. He has the 2nd lowest points for. He's middle of the pack in points against. His pros, quarterbacks are top tier. Herbert is the QB1 right now. And then Kirk Cousins has been really solid, top 10 quarterback as well. And then Devontae and then Swift and Andrews give some weekly upside. But then outside of that, his team is pretty depressing. Swift right now is your running back 1. Can he stay healthy? Does he get a full workload? Like, I think there's a lot of questions around him. If he's like your 3rd running back, I think that's incredible to have, but to rely on him as your RB1, I think is pretty scary. Does Brees show any life? Obviously, their offense is horrible with Rodgers out. Can he be decent? And then can Miles Sanders or Rachaad White be serviceable for you? Otherwise, then who is your like receiver 2. Amari Cooper's been up and down. Marquise Brown has actually been pretty good. You should start him. But, like, what is his upside? Because the Cardinals' offense is just not the best. And then second to last in points forward, despite having the highest scoring quarterback and then the 7th highest scoring quarterback. That just means that the production from basically everywhere else on your roster is so bad. And I think that obviously is a concern to be such low points for and have 2 very high scoring quarterbacks. And last but not least, we have Michael. He is last in points for. He has the lowest points against. Pros, his quarterbacks are good. Tua and Jordan Love are both top 10. And then he also has CJ Stroud and Deshaun Watson, who are both startable week in and week out. It's a shame he can't just start all 4 because the rest of his roster is pretty ugly. Saquon's been hurt. But, if he bounces back, he's pretty much a lock to be like a top 10 running back. That would be huge for you. And then James Conner has been solid. So getting consistent production from 2 running backs, that would be big for your team. Concerns, your receiver situation is not great. Garrett Wilson has been essentially ruined with Aaron Rodgers' injury. Debo's pretty inconsistent and injury prone. You do have Jalen Waddle now. I think that's a big upgrade for you. And then Michael Thomas and Joshua Palmer, are those like weekly start guys? So receivers just not great, but I do like the Waddle addition for you. To have the lowest points against and still be 1-3 is a bad sign. I hate to break it to you, but that does not bode well for you. Also, worst points for, not a great indication for how your season's going to go either. And then you also don't have a 1st, 2nd, or 3rd round pick next year, so I'll be very interested to see how you approach your roster as the season goes on. All right, so last thing I did was do some power rankings. I tried to factor in both kind of overall talent of the roster, how it's performed so far, and then kind of my expectations regarding like playoffs in particular. And so I also tried to tier it because this early in the season, I think it's not super clear yet really who, what teams are going to super emerge. But I do have myself and Cam at the top. I think my team's been super high scoring. I've had some bad luck as far as losing close games and having high scores against me. But I'm feeling really good about my team, sitting at 2-2. Cam, I think, is in that tier as well. He's 3-1. And then again, I already talked about the injuries and the underperforming that he's had from some key players. And then kind of in a next tier of their own, I have Jacob. Again, these aren't like in super strong order, but Jacob right now is 3-1 and he plays Thomas. He's probably making playoffs. That's just kind of the fact of the matter. And then Bobby, I have in that group as well. And then Andrew and Nick Finley. I think those 4 teams just seem to have a few more question marks and positional uncertainty, whereas I think myself and Cam's roster is just a little bit deeper. And then if I could have made this tier massively bigger, I would have, because Michael and T-Bay's teams are both trash and they are on a different level of terribleness. And that's it for my week 4 recap. Hope everyone enjoyed it, and I very much look forward to seeing all of you this weekend for Michael's wedding. It's probably the only good thing that's going to happen to him this Sunday. I'll see you guys.